Hello there. Welcome into a Wednesday edition of the show. So glad to have you, whether you're listening on 740 KVOR, Extra Sports 1300, or the apps of those two fine radio stations. They are both free to download. They are both free to use. It's not just this show that you can listen to on those. And listen to any show that is on these two radio stations. And the apps are sponsored by Diversus Health. Mental health and well-being for all. It will be a veritable cornucopia of sports topics coming your way over the course of the program. And I'd love to get your thoughts at 719-247-1313. We'll get into the Denver Broncos. Guess who once again wants back on the Denver Broncos? See if you think that's a fit. And more fallout from the firing of offensive coordinator Joe Lombardi as the Denver Broncos try to be better than they were this season in order to get back to the AFC Championship. But we start today with the Denver Nuggets. And if you're a fan of this team, if you've watched them over this month, you've been put in a really weird spot. I don't know if you feel this way. I do. Once Nikola Jokic got hurt, the expectations went out the window. And you just, as a fan, were just hanging on for dear life, saying, please just don't fall into the play-in. You had no expectation. And then they kept winning. Now, granted, not at as good of a clip as they were with Nikola Jokic, but they're winning certainly more than anyone thought they would, given that Jokic has been out. And he's not the only guy they've been missing over this stretch, right? So it's a weird position that all of a sudden there are kind of expectations when you watch the Denver Nuggets on a nightly basis. Case in point last night. So if the rest of the game against the Detroit Pistons would have just followed what happened in the first quarter, Pistons came out and they just looked to be too much for the Denver Nuggets, who were without and Ray Dominguez, producer, help me if I'm missing one, Nikola Jokic, Christian Brown, Aaron Gordon. I think of the important players, who? Oh, and Cam Johnson. Missing all of those players. Detroit, the number one team in the East, came out and looked to be the much better team, as you would expect. They were up by 13 after one, and I think you felt like, all right, this one's a loss, but you weren't upset about it. Disappointed, maybe, not upset. How can you be upset at this team with all the guys they're missing, including the best player in the world? And then they came back. And then they rallied against the best team in the Eastern Conference. And with about 7.5 minutes to go, they were down 12. So even as late as the fourth quarter, if you're like, all right, this one's over, no big deal, a little disappointed, kind of stunk 2 hours plus into this, and they didn't end up coming back. But they weren't finished yet. They whittled it down to 3 points with 3.5 seconds to go. Jamal Murray gets fouled on a 3-point shot. Goes to the line with 3 free throws to potentially tie the game with 3.5 seconds to go. Misses the first. One of the, arguably the best when you talk about volume and percentage, the best free throw shooter the Denver Nuggets have. Misses the first, makes the second 2. Nuggets are down by 1. They foul Tobias Harris. He goes to the line, makes both of his free throws. Nuggets back down by 3 with 2.3 seconds to go. Nuggets advance the ball to midcourt, and then this happens. Audio courtesy of the Altitude Radio Network.
Payton Watson will inbound the basketball. The inbound goes to, you got to call him, Payton. Murray for 3. Missed it, but got fouled. There was a whistle with 0.7 seconds to go. Oh, Detroit, what a bonehead play that is.
Okay, so it was even less time left, and absolutely what a bonehead play that was. Jamal Murray is basically falling out of bounds from the corner, and the Pistons foul him. So once again, the best free throw shooter that the Denver Nuggets have, a guy that is almost certainly going to be an all-star this year, having a career year. Not one of these guys like Payton Watson or Tim Hardaway where you go, well, this is kind of found money with the way that they've stepped up. This is Jamal Murray we're talking about. He goes back to the free throw line for 3 more free throws to again tie the game. Makes the first, and here was the second.
Second free throw for Jamal. Short. He had 2 chances to do it.
And what Kaz is referring to there, obviously, he gets sent to the line twice with 3 free throws to tie the game. He misses one on the last set and then misses one here. Obviously, intentionally misses the third ball tipped out ball game. Therein lies the experience over the last few weeks of watching the Denver Nuggets. You don't want to have expectations. You don't want to place expectations on this team. If they win a game, you're excited. But they came back in that game. They had a chance to win it without Nikola Jokic on the floor, their best player, with the ball in his hands, not once, but twice at the free throw line to be able to tie that game. And who knows what happens if they go into overtime. But I think as a fan, you have to be a little frustrated with the way that game played out. Was it a game that Denver Nuggets deserved to win? No. Was it a game they should have had a chance to win? No. It's the Detroit Pistons, the number 1 team in the East, but yet they did. That's been the last 3 weeks. Nuggets shouldn't win these games. You shouldn't expect them to, but yet they do, and yet they give themselves a chance. So you as a fan, are you supposed to be like, oh, well? No. They had a chance to win the game with their best player, not named Nikola Jokic at the free throw line, not once, but twice. Here's Jamal Murray after the game.
I just got to be better. I had to go an opportunity there twice. Once to redeem myself. It wasn't my night. I just got to be better. I got to be better. Just all throughout the game, not just miss free throws. I didn't play well today.
Jamal Murray, in just the last 7 minutes of that basketball game last night, has 12 points on 4 or 5 shooting from the field, dishes out 4 assists, which led to 9 more Denver Nuggets points, and grabs a rebound. So you would expect Jamal Murray to take accountability for the free throw misses, but he goes a step further and talks about how he didn't play well. My brother, that you wouldn't even had a chance to win that game without you. Let's not go too far here. 12 points, 4 assists, and a rebound in 7 minutes to bring the Denver Nuggets back from double digits down in the fourth quarter against the best the East has to offer. Now whose expectations are a little bit too high? But yeah, you got to make those free throws. And instead of being 10-5 without Nikola Jokic, the Denver Nuggets are now 9-6. And the odds of Nikola Jokic being ready by Sunday's game against OKC looking a little bit shaky, although I believe that game is on NBC. They put out a graphic today, which includes Nikola Jokic. So I don't know what power the television partners of the NBA have, but they are selling their Sunday doubleheader with Nikola Jokic and the Denver Nuggets taking on OKC. They may have to change that graphic. But David Adelman, after the game, perfectly encapsulates what I have been discussing.
I'm going to keep saying this. This group is just playing, and I'm pissed and lost, but I'm also, I just enjoy watching these guys. I think they play the right way. Even when things get ugly, they don't hang their heads. They just keep coming. And this group as well, as the year goes on, we get healthy.
You're pissed, but they're so fun to watch. It's so fun right now. This team with these guys and the emergence of Payton Watson and Jonas Valanciunas, who was good last night, and Tim Hardaway, who might be the sixth man of the year. And talk about the job that David Adelman has done navigating all of this. Because again, it's not just Jokic. It was Valanciunas. It's been Aaron Gordon. It's been Christian Brown. It's been Cam Johnson. And yet the Denver Nuggets maintain their spot in the West. As long as they don't fall off a cliff in the next week, barring Nikola Jokic's return, of course, the Nuggets will have lost nothing without their best player. That the perfect sentiment from David Adelman. You're upset, but you continue to enjoy watching this basketball team operate and win games that they have no business winning and never being out of it except for that Charlotte game. That was really bad. But to David Adelman's larger point here, it's hard to think that this stretch isn't going to make the Denver Nuggets a better basketball team than already they were. Before Nikola Jokic got hurt, really before the rash of injuries that the Denver Nuggets have sustained, man, they were wagging. So already the conversation was, and I remember having this conversation with you. I said the Denver Nuggets have established themselves as clearly the biggest threat to OKC. And going into the year, there were some questions, right? The Minnesota Timberwolves thing was kind of lingering. Was that still a bad matchup for the Denver Nuggets? The Houston Rockets with the move that they made bringing in Kevin Durant. It's a little bit more of an open question. And then the way that the Denver Nuggets played and the fact that they beat Minnesota multiple times, they beat Houston, and it was like, yeah, if not OKC, it's got to be Denver. And then you get into this stretch, and I think the conclusion most people are coming to right now is that when this team is fully healthy, they're better than OKC. Champs, like who's the best team in the NBA this year? I don't know how this can't benefit the Denver Nuggets. The confidence, if nothing else, of this basketball team is really got to be sky high right now. Maybe not so much after last night's game, but when they have some time to reflect, when they wake up today, gotta be like, man, we took the absolute best team in the Eastern Conference to the brink. They had us dead to rights, and we blew it. And normally you want to build confidence by blowing a basketball game, but I think you take in the macro and look at what this team's been able to do. I mean, Payton Watson, the confidence that he's got to have, and the confidence that David Adelman has. I mean, here's a thing that when we go back and re-legislate, and it seems like we do this every other week, who is right, Michael Malone or Calvin Booth? And I always said there wasn't enough, and you take it on a case-by-case basis, player-by-player basis. When it comes to Peyton Watson versus Jalen Pickett versus Julian Strother, and you go down the list. But overall, you have to acknowledge that there's kind of a chicken or the egg thing here where did Michael Malone not play these guys because they did nothing to instill confidence in him, or did he not give them the playing time that was necessary for them to develop to give them the confidence for Michael Malone to trust them? And it was always back and forth, and it changed from player to player. And one thing that I can cut Michael Malone a little bit of slack is, look, you're in the middle of a season. You're battling for one of the top seeds. You're trying to win a championship. Like, what game are you going to just punt on to give Jalen Pickett some extra run? Well, by a situation no one wanted the Denver Nuggets to be in, being without Nikola Jokic and a host of other players, David Adelman has had no choice but to give these guys time. And they've flourished. And now when everybody is back, some interesting decisions await David Adelman. But whatever roles he decides to put all of these guys in, he's got to have extreme confidence that they can deliver. And that's going to end up being the moral to this story here of this month of no Nikola Jokic. That this team still needs him to win a title. He's still by far their best player. But hey, the rest of the Denver Nuggets, they're not too shabby either. Take your thoughts on the game last night. 109-107 Nuggets had a chance to beat the number one team in the East and just fell short. Do you echo the same sentiments of David Adelman? Like, you're angry, but you're having so much fun watching this team do things that no one expected them to do without Nikola Jokic. 719 24/7 13-13 coming up next. I got to get into I'll get to the Belichick stuff in a little bit. What I want to get to next is our question of the day. Somebody once again is saying, I want to be back with the Denver Broncos. I'll tell you who that is, and we'll discuss whether it's a good idea next on 740 KVOR and Extra Sports 1300. Welcome back. Let's get into the subject of our question of the day. You know, I don't think I've ever left a good enough impression on any company or human being that I have ever encountered in my life to elicit the longing that Von Miller has to return to the Denver Broncos. And I was a fantastic sandwich artist at Subway. I was one of the best that they had, and I don't think that they care one bit that I haven't worked there in 23 years. But something about this Broncos organization has Von Miller longing for them like a lost love. It is every 5 minutes with this guy. This is him on his most recent episode of his free range podcast.
Next year, this Denver Broncos team is going to be scary. And I think that's where you enter Von Miller. Hey, if you win a Super Bowl for Eric, you got to be crazy. I'm not throwing anybody on the bus. But that play at the end of the game where Drake May rolled out for the bootleg and got the first down, I think Von makes that play. I think I'm not pointing fingers at nobody. I'm just saying me. I'm just saying me.
Okay. Well, first of all, you are pointing fingers because there was a Broncos player that just so happened to play the same position you do that was chasing after Drake May and did not catch him, and that was Jonah Ellis. And that is actually quite perfect for this exercise because for Nick Benito or Jonathan Cooper, I ask this question, and you go, well, of course not. But if it's Jonah Ellis, I think it's more of a question, so I pose it to you. If you bring in Von Miller, are you wanting to say goodbye to Jonah Ellis? Are you out on the development of Jonah Ellis? Or just out on who he is as a player? Because I have said this the other 18 times that Von Miller has openly expressed his desire to come back to the Denver Broncos, that is a guy that the Denver Broncos thought highly of. They drafted him, they developed him, and he's done some things for him. But bringing Von Miller into that room, it becomes too crowded. So if you bring in Von Miller, are you okay with Jonah Ellis being nothing anymore? Either you trade him or he's just buried further on the depth chart and never develops. And that's I mean, Jonah Ellis is the main guy, but think about the other players like a Lavelle Bailey, who George Payton just raved about yesterday. Like all of those guys, you might as well just get rid of them. Because Von Miller is going to take their snaps. Because what Von Miller's not saying here, because I think it's just understood, this guy is not going to rejoin the Denver Broncos just to be a cheerleader on the sideline. He's talking about him being able to catch Drake May, which, by the way, I don't believe he would have. But he's saying he would have. So he clearly believes that he has plenty enough left in the tank to help the Denver Broncos get to where they want to go next season. So he's not going to be okay with being buried on the depth chart for being this ceremonious signing just to make Broncos fans have the warm and fuzzies. He thinks he could be a difference maker. In 17 games this year for the Washington Commanders, he had 9 sacks. Not bad production. He actually, I have to give him credit here, he actually turned it around because he was spiraling down towards the end of his time in Buffalo. Like his production kept dropping, which is part of the reason why he wasn't on the Bills anymore. Washington brings him in 9 sacks in 17 games. I still am of the mind that the next time Von Miller enters the Broncos facilities, it should be to sign a one-day contract to retire a Denver Bronco. And then the inevitable putting him in the ring of honor there at Empower Field. I don't know if we want to talk about number retirement, but certainly he's going to be put into that ring of fame. That's where I think Von Miller ends up with the Broncos. That's what it looks like. I just think that the Denver Broncos, it was unfortunate that they were not able to get themselves right where Von Miller, who was still in his prime, could make a difference, but he couldn't. And the best thing he became in the end was trade bait. But now the Broncos are in a better place, much better place. And at Von Miller's position, they have talent to burn. So I mean, there's something to like going backwards. Like I just feel like it's going backwards to seek out a reunion with Von Miller. I don't see that there's a need. I don't see that he's a major upgrade. Yeah, I mean, there is one position on the team where you can afford to be a little bit patient with the guys who are down the depth chart, and that should be at outside linebacker. You can't sign everyone, right? Despite it feeling like the Denver Broncos have an unlimited amount of money to be able to spend in free agency, they don't. And for this to be anywhere on the list of to-dos for George Payton, to me, wouldn't make any sense. Like Von Miller moved on. It was unfortunate what happened. Von Miller moved on, won a Super Bowl. So the Broncos, in that way, did right by him. And the Broncos, although it took them a little bit longer than Von Miller to find success, they did. Everybody ended up better off. So Von Miller better be an obvious upgrade and have a real role with this team, or it just seems like this is a waste of the Broncos' time. And look, if the Broncos had a dearth of talent at that position, the position that Von Miller plays is everything. Okay, if they had a dearth of talent there, then you say, all right, why the heck no? But they're good there. They're more than good. And I don't know that we criticized a lot of people. We cut up that blame pie for Sunday. I don't know that Jonah Ellis got a slice of that. Did anybody watch that bootleg with Drake May and say, Jonah Ellis, you got to make that play? That's where the Broncos lost the game, more than Jared Stidham's turnover, more than 4th and 1. I didn't hear any of it. And I think Jonah Ellis, with a smaller role, because you want Jonathan Cooper and Nick Bonito on the field as much as you can get them on the field, I thought he was very impactful. I mean, there are other young players on this roster that you have more questions about than Jonah Ellis. I don't know the optics of it. I get it that it's, it make a lot of people be able to pull out a jersey that they inevitably have in their closet and haven't been able to wear. They can bring that back when they go to a home game. And I get the PR bump and all of that kind of stuff. But it's like the Broncos are in a different place now. They need to be ruthless about their roster decisions. And they're not in the business of, some summer storyline of Von Miller coming back to the Denver Broncos. If George Payton believes that after all of these other to-do list items, that there is enough money in the budget to sign Von Miller to a minimum deal, then okay, we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. But like Von Miller being a priority, no way. I just don't see what can't be accomplished by just when Von Miller hangs it up doing the 1-day contract thing. He's going to retire a Bronco. He'll go into Canton as a Bronco. He'll be forever immortalized in the stadium. What can you really get from Von Miller, who's another year older? I could give him credit for what he did in Washington, but he's going to be a year older. I don't feel like it's worth the Broncos' time to seriously consider this. If they do check off every other box, then and you have nothing else to do, and you're sitting there on a random Thursday and going, hey, maybe we could get Von Miller to come back. Okay, we can have that conversation at that time. But I think what Sunday and hearing from you the last couple of days, there's a lot of other stuff you want this franchise to do. I can't imagine that anybody is putting Von Miller above all of these other things. But I just don't think it's worth the Broncos' time anyway. At any point. Take your thoughts on it. 719-247-1313. I understand that I'm kind of in a different place. It's not my favorite team. One of the best moments of my life as a sports fan was not Von Miller sacking Cam Newton in Super Bowl 50. So that's why we put the question out at Extra Sports 1300. Facebook's where you could go to respond, or obviously 719-247-1313. You're closer to the situation than I am. I'm looking at it from how do the Broncos get better? But maybe you want that reunion. 719-247-1313. Coming up next, my thoughts on the snubbing of Bill Belichick as a first ballot Hall of Famer. You're listening to 740 KVOR and Extra Sports 1300. Avs and Senators tonight, 5 o'clock. Coverage begins from altitude on Extra Sports 1300. We'll be continuing the show exclusively on KVOR at 5 o'clock. Just a little programming note there. I would like to, the news yesterday of Bill Belichick not getting reportedly the amount of votes he needed to make the Pro Football Hall of Fame on his first try. It hit my ear a little bit wrong, but I thought about it. I went home, I meditated, and had a good night's sleep, came back, and you know what? I'm all for it. I'm all for football writers to get back at Bill Belichick for the way he treated them when he was a head coach. I am. He was a curmudgeon. He tried to make pro football writers look bad. So you want to deny him the greatest accomplishment of his life, arguably, over your vendetta. I am all for it. In fact, I would like you to come forward so we can give you a hero's celebration. Oh, wait, you don't want to raise your hand and say that you were one of the people who didn't vote for Bill Belichick? You think that maybe you being petty is not a good look? So you're going to stay behind the protection that the Hall of Fame gives you, that you don't have to come out and say how you voted? That's very brave of you. Oh, no, not brave. What's a cowardly? That's the word I'm looking for. If Bill Belichick did not get the necessary 40 votes to be in on the first ballot to the Pro Football Hall of Fame because writers were sticking it to him, that's pretty pathetic. And really what it comes down to is whose ego do you think more is out of whack and you want to be checked? Is it Bill Belichick's, or is it the pro football writers who, by the way, consistently do this? Tell me, by the way, when Mike Shanahan's going to get in the Hall of Fame. That same committee. Can you let me know when the guy who is responsible for like 10 head coaches in the NFL, including a few of the most successful ones, now, and Mike Shanahan won 2 Super Bowls, tell me when he's going to get in. Now, I don't think that they're spiting Mike Shanahan. I'm just saying that this is an entity that hasn't always gotten it right. And they have, by doing this, have done the one thing that I thought was impossible. You have turned Bill Belichick into a sympathetic figure. Everybody is just dancing in the streets over the fact that he's getting blown out every single week in North Carolina. That his young girlfriend seems to be in complete control of his life. Everyone loves that these things are happening. And you think that would be enough. You think that would be enough to be utterly embarrassed for an entire calendar year was enough for these writers and these front office executives and these committee members. You think that would be enough? No, they want to dish out their own brand of justice. We're going to send a message. He's not getting in on the first ballot. Is he getting on the second ballot? Well, absolutely. We're not stupid. He's Bill Belichick. But that first ballot, he's not getting in. Point taken. Well done. Well done, committee. This is absurd. Your job is not, by the way, there's no character clause like there is in the Baseball Hall of Fame. Bill Belichick being mean to you and your friends should not enter into the equation. And you're just telling on yourself, and people are questioning whether you know ball by not voting him in. And again, it's a problem that comes up with many other cases, and Mike Shanahan's a great example. Like, they mess this up all the time. They wait on guy. Oh, we'll wait. I don't want to go to the darkest timeline here, but you wait a year. Who knows what happens in that year? Right? So you want to send a message that Bill Belichick was mean to you. And who knows what happens in a year? And it certainly wouldn't be the first time. And I don't want to, I think you know what I'm implying here. I think that'll happen, but I'm just like, what they have tremendous power. These committees that vote for the Hall of Fame, they have tremendous power. And to be petty with the greatest coach in football history, it's absurd. And I get it. Some people are saying, well, what if they're looking at what happened when Tom Brady left? Okay, you know what they could do? They could come out and say that. They could come out and say that. And then we can have a real conversation, a real debate. But they don't want to come out from the shadows. Now, all the people that voted for him, I think it's quite telling, that are coming out and saying, oh, I voted for him. Why? Because they know it's pathetic that others did not. He is the most slam dunk, put him in right away, move on, get to the next guy for coaches in the history of football. It's so easy. It's a slam dunk. Do it. Move on. Not saying you got to go to the guy's induction ceremony or to his party or buy a present, but put the guy in the Hall of Fame where he deserves to be. And don't lord over him as some kind of getting the last laugh because Bill Belichick mumbled his way through press conferences. And the thing about it is, I don't even care that much, like, for Bill Belichick. Like, I'm not a huge fan of his. And I can acknowledge that he wasn't the nicest human being, that he was a jerk. But therein lies how ridiculous that this is, that I found a bigger ego that needs to be checked. And again, the fact that these people aren't coming out of the woodwork to explain why they didn't put Bill Belichick in shows that this rule needs to change. This is sports. And I know I'm getting a little heated about it, but at the end of the day, it's sports. Okay, so what is the harm in the votes being public? What's the harm in that? Because the only reason to keep this all under wraps and behind closed doors and not let us know who's voting how is to protect these voters if they want to carry out some personal vendetta against somebody. And I don't think that's a good reason. Yes, Bill Belichick's going to get in at some point, but to me it just makes it even sillier that they feel like they can do this and it like sends some kind of a message. No, it makes you look like an idiot. Because we know you're trying to make a statement. You're clearly trying to. And the best that we have to go on is that you're making this statement based on how he treated you. So if we're wrong about this, and this is more about his lack of success without Tom Brady, please, by all means, come forward, tweet it out. And I may disagree, but at least that's a football reason. And again, I can't get over the fact that they have suddenly turned Bill Belichick. Did you see the outpouring on social media yesterday? They have turned Bill Belichick into a sympathetic figure. Everyone was pointing and laughing at him and saying it serves him right and mocking him because of the way that Jordan Hudson apparently runs his life in the fact that he can't get North Carolina to even be competitive. Everybody was relishing in Bill Belichick's demise, and just like that, with one report, now people who probably hated Bill Belichick the entire time he was in New England are now sticking up for him. These Hall of Fame voters, like they need their egos checked. And I think that the best way to do it is to just make it public. Just make it public. Simple as that. I'm not asking for people's votes to get taken away, but just stand behind what you're doing. Easy. Hold these people accountable, saying we're going to show the world how you voted, and people are going to be reaching out and asking you, why'd you do this? You better have a good explanation. Think it's simple. And this isn't just football. This is every sport because it happens in every sport. 719-24/7-1313. Welcome in hour 2 on this Wednesday. Happy to have you. Shouts to those of you watching. Apparently, we're down to just Twitter and YouTube. Some technical issues going on. So at XTRA Sports 1300 is where you can currently watch the show, and we'll work to get them back up on other social media platforms. Most days it works. So if you follow either KVOR or Extra Sports on social media, you can watch the show on a daily basis. And while you're there, if I could ask you a favor, you're already doing me a favor by watching the show, but if you can like, subscribe, follow, I'll make you a deal. You drop a comment on there, I'll get to it on the air. You can also call or text into the show at 719-247-1313. Get to Sean Payton in a moment, speaking of ego. But in the meantime, I know that your time is valuable. So if you call in, I want to get to you as soon as possible. Ed calls in and wants to talk about Bill Belichick not getting the required votes to get in the Hall of Fame on the first try. Ed, great to have you. How do you feel about that?
Well, thank you, Mr. Kaufman. I agree with you wholeheartedly. I don't like Bill Belichick, but these guys that vote, they should make their votes known. So they, like you said, if they vote one way or another, they can say, well, why they voted this or that.
100%. And look, do you think that this is about who Bill Belichick was as a head coach in the curmudgeonly nature of him? Do you believe that that's really at the heart of this and why he's getting snubbed, or do you think it may be a different reason?
No, I think it's because of the way he's treated the press in the past. You know that he would go, well, let's go next week.
Right, we're on to Cincinnati. Yeah,
the story guys don't know. They don't care about that. And so I honestly, I think they're trying to get it. They're trying to get back at him. Say, okay, boom, boom. Like you said, he's probably going to get in the Hall of Fame because he's a good coach. It doesn't matter what he did after Tom Brady. Say.
Yeah, I mean, he had done. We have these conversations, and Barry Bonds is the one that comes up, like the idea that he was a Hall of Famer before steroids. And I don't want to open up that Pandora's box, but it's just one that comes to mind. What happened after when Brady left? There wasn't enough time there for it to be like, did Bill Belichick coach himself out of the Hall of Fame? He did plenty before that. So I don't see why his Hall of Fame candidacy would be in question either. But
well, again, Brian, it's just the last hook.
Yeah,
get that last one in. Yeah, he's going to get in the Hall of Fame.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and that's all. I just wanted to tell you I agree with you wholeheartedly.
Well, I appreciate that, Ed, and call more often, and not just because you agreed with me on this. Feel free to call in when you disagree with me. I just want you to call in more often. And that's the other part of this, too. You do this, okay? You stick it to him. You're sticking it to Bill Belichick. If he gets in anyway, like, what do you expect? Do you expect him to, when he steps to the podium in Canton, to go, I want to apologize to all the writers that I mumbled answers to their questions? Like, what are you getting other than just some like weird satisfaction over sticking it to him, but you're doing it anonymously? And that's why I say, like, come forward. Receive your flowers for doing this. Like, how is this? I just don't get it from every single angle. I just don't, and it's petty and it's silly, and there is a group of people's egos who are as big as Bill Belichick's, and it's clearly those who vote for Hall of Fame. It's not just a football program problem. Baseball's got this problem as well. So we'll continue that conversation at 719-247-1313. In the meantime, I said Sean Payton, speaking of ego. So Joe Lombardi, the now fired offensive coordinator of the Denver Broncos, spoke to Chris Thomason of the Gazette and said on his firing, because it probably surprised you a little bit like it surprised me. Joe Lombardi, in trying to explain why perhaps he is on the unemployment line, said, quote, he was in one of those moods where he felt like some changes needed to be made. He was in a mood. Not that Joe Lombardi did anything wrong to deserve to be fired. Sean Payton was just in one of those moods. And this is a guy who coached with Sean Payton for like 15 years. Gotta think he knows Sean Payton pretty well. Joe Lombardi being fired because Sean Payton was in a mood. That does not give me a ton of hope that Sean Payton is going to relinquish play calling duties. Because this feels like, if this is the reason. Now, again, there's the Davis Webb of it all. That if this ends up going the direction I think it is, and Davis Webb becomes the offensive coordinator, and this was all coordinated to elevate Davis Webb to that spot, then it's a different story. But if this is just about shuffling the deck a little bit here, kind of an insignificant move in the grand scheme of things, doing what you say, and to fire somebody that's coached with you for 15 years because you were in a mood doesn't speak well to that Sean Payton's ego has calmed down a little bit after he made that baffling decision to go for it on 4th and 1 in the most important game of the season. But if the change that Joe Lombardi is saying that Sean Payton was in the mood to do, if it ends up with Davis Webb being the offensive coordinator and play caller of the Denver Broncos, then I think there's like a real justifiable reason for firing Joe Lombardi, even though, again, Joe Lombardi did nothing wrong that I can tell to deserve being fired. If this is about clearing the way for a young, bright offensive mind to be elevated and to be empowered within the Broncos organization, then that's where you say, man, it's a tough business. But the Broncos may be doing the right thing. But if this is just about, I'm kind of sick of your face, and I don't know that that's positive progress towards the Denver Broncos being back in the AFC Championship next year. Now, to that end of play calling, a report from Ian Rappaport, and I had to chuckle a little bit when I read it, said that Joe Brady, who is now the head coach of the Buffalo Bills, was being courted in some way by into the NFL. And Ian Rappaport put on that he was being courted to be the new offensive coordinator of the Denver Broncos with potential of calling plays, in parentheses. So Sean Payton was reportedly dangling the offensive coordinator job of the Denver Broncos in front of Joe Brady, or back channeling it, or whatever has to happen to comply to that kind of stuff. Again, if I'm a Broncos fan, I don't have a lot of hope that Sean Payton is relinquishing play calling duties. But I still assert that it should happen. And not just for the sake of doing it. Yeah, not just for the sake of doing it, because that's what firing Joe Lombardi is without knowing the corresponding move. That's doing it just to do it. The reason why Sean Payton should relinquish play calling duties is because in the most important game of the season, he made the most egregious error in judgment and decision making when it came to the play calling. And if there is someone that you can put in that position that is competent, that Broncos fans and players can believe in, which it seems like Davis Webb is that guy, then you're turning over the keys to somebody who's capable. This is not about just giving up the play calling duties because you messed up. Like, hand me your keys. You messed up. This is about giving those keys to somebody who widespread opinion says can be really good at this. So I would hope that the end game here with firing Joe Lombardi is not just because Sean Payton was in a mood. I hope there is a plan here. Because I've seen other reports out there that this is something that Sean Payton does. Has he done this after he won the Super Bowl with New Orleans, knowing the answer is yes? How'd that work out? When was the next time the Saints went back to the Super Bowl after they won? So there's got to be a plan here and not just a whim on Sean Payton. I know he's done a lot right, but I don't think there's a Sean Payton can do no wrong feeling here in the wake of Sunday's game. So we'll see how this plays out. Again, the Denver Broncos got to, do the Rooney Rule, and I hope that they take it seriously and allow for themselves, if they have it in their mind that they want to elevate Davis Webb. I hope and that's fine. Like, you're allowed to have a front runner in your head, but just be open to maybe there's somebody out there better. And then if you decide there's not, you elevate Davis Webb and you empower him. Not offensive coordinator in name only, which it seemed like Joe Lombardi was. Do the main thing that we expect offensive coordinators to do, which is call plays. Now, in the meantime, the interest in Davis Webb, not necessarily as a head coach, although Vegas still is looming out there. There are other teams that are interested in Davis Webb services, and the one that I keep going back to that I don't think Sean Payton, with or without play calling duties, can match is if Jesse Minter makes Davis Webb his offensive coordinator. That is a sweet gig. You get to coach a 2-time MVP. You get to call plays. And your boss is not Sean Payton. I feel like that's a triple threat of good things. Coach Lamar, who is infinitely more talented than Bo Nix and more accomplished to boot, have real power, real say over the success of an offense, which is, we don't know is guaranteed if he becomes the offensive coordinator for the Denver Broncos. And I got to imagine that Jesse Minter is a little bit easier to work for, or will be easier to work for. This is Jesse Minter's first head coaching gig. So that's the one of all of these that I say, man, that's going to be a tough job if Baltimore does want Davis Webb to be their offensive coordinator. That is a tough gig for Davis Webb to turn down, to maybe or maybe not call plays for the Denver Broncos. if the if Sean Payton comes to Davis Webb whenever he is allowed to and say, "Oh, I'm giving you play calling duties," then I think, staying in Denver, continuity, a quarterback that he clearly likes working with in Bo Nix, even if he's not as good as Lamar Jackson. I think that play calling piece might end up deciding it. And even if you give that to him, there's no guarantee he doesn't want to go to Baltimore. But I think the only shot, if Baltimore is serious about making Davis Webb their offensive coordinator, I think the only thing that you could do to possibly counter it is by saying, well, you can have play calling duties here. And I think that would be best for the Denver Broncos. So win-win. Take your thoughts. 719-247-1313. So outside of the coaching staff, where do the Broncos need to get better? A lot of questions about that posed to George Payton and Sean Payton both. You'll hear their thoughts. I'll give mine, and I'll take yours as well here on 740 KVOR and Extra Sports 1300. I am quite literally shocked that Donnie has weighed in saying that the OC job with Baltimore, regardless of play calling duties, would be better than being the OC for the Denver Broncos. If I'm a hot candidate like Davis Webb is, I want to call plays. I do. And I think most OCs don't call them that, want to call plays. So I get what you're doing, Donnie. Proud member of Ravens flock, but I'm going to need play calling duties if I'm Davis Webb. I want to be driving that sports car that is Lamar Jackson on Sundays and giving out play calls. So. And speaking of OCs for the Baltimore Ravens, Todd Monken, now your head coach of the Cleveland Browns. Man, that dude's got to feel great. You were the Browns' 8th option after 7 other guys passed because they didn't want to take an IQ test or whatever the crap the Cleveland Browns were. Our question of the day: Von Miller once again openly campaigning while throwing Jonah Ellis under the bus for not tackling Drake May in the final play of Sunday's game, saying he wants to come back to the Denver Broncos. Do you want Von Miller back? Ray Dominguez, producer extraordinaire. What say the peeps on Facebook?
So from Thomas, it says, hope so.
Okay.
Bobby, most definitely.
Okay.
And from Jose, for the vet minimum, no need to pay someone more than that for situational plays.
And Jose is your front runner for best Facebook comment of the day, because there's more nuance to this than just the idea of would you like to see Von Miller back on the Denver Broncos. There are real implications for this roster, and one of those is Von Miller. One thing Von Miller has not mentioned is he willing to take nothing to play for the Denver Broncos, coming off of a 9-sack season for the Washington Commanders. I would be curious for Von Miller to answer that question. Would he take the vet minimum to come to the Denver Broncos? If it's the vet minimum, and if the Denver Broncos check every other box on their to-do list, then we can have the conversation about Von Miller back in the Broncos. And I still don't think I'd be in favor of it because, again, the optics of we're going back into our past. No, you got a bright future. Lean into it. Move forward. That chapter of Broncos history is closed. So, all right. You could keep commenting on Facebook at Extra Sports 1300. Speaking of how the Broncos can get better, I think there's just a mantra or just an idea that needs to be in the heads of Sean Payton and George Payton, which is good enough is not good enough. And what I mean by that, I think we can all agree that the wide receiver room is in definite need of an upgrade. Like, there is a job opening in that room. But I would expand it throughout the roster, and maybe Von Miller fits into this. Maybe you feel like Jonah Ellis is good enough, but that's not good enough. That Von Miller would be better. But I think there's no reason that the Broncos need to go crazy. Sean Payton talking about having more money, which he once used a metaphor when it comes to interior decorating.
If I said I'm going to give you $50,000 to decorate your home or $200,000, the home's going to look nice, right? If you're a decent shopper, you have more money. I think the same takes place with our sport.
Now, the decent shopper line is the most important, because you don't want to just And think of the Parks and Recreation episode where John Raffio and Tom Haverford start Entertainment 720. And they get that airplane hangar and the crap they put in it. Like, that's not good interior decorating. That's not good shopping. And they ended up bankrupt. Nobody need. What was that chair even? It was like a couch, but like it went up. It was, they spent their money on a lot of stupid stuff. It's the same thing with the Denver Broncos. You don't need to just go out and buy 3 new wide receivers and another and a corner and 3 linebackers and just spend the money because you have it. They traded for Russell Wilson in part because they had the draft capital. How'd that work out? They signed Russell Wilson, even better. They signed Russell Wilson to an extension because they had the money. It was not a good investment. So, yes, the Denver Broncos, if you like the moves they have made, they do need to take some of the same mentality when it comes to having more money. You still want them spending it on the right things. But they may like, to stick with Sean Payton's analogy here, they may like the couch that they have, but if there's a better couch and fits the feng shui of their living room, then they should buy that. And the couch in this instance is running back. I would argue, even though they definitely need another wide receiver, I would argue the pass game of the Denver Broncos was in better shape for most of this year than the run game. And this is supposed to be a core tenet of the Denver Broncos, is being able to run the football. I don't think it was good enough for a team that claims to run the ball, even with how much everyone liked J.K. Dobbins. Here's Sean Payton on potential improvements to that aspect of their game.
Losing J.K. Obviously was a tough loss. He brought a lot to the locker room, more than you would know. But that'll be one of the points of emphasis that I think that we researched and look into heavily. I want to play from the gun, but I also will always want to play with a 2-back or multiple tight end mindset. Have that flexibility. And good question. I think it's one of the key things that we have to do this offseason.
So it seems like Sean Payton is very amenable to my idea. J.K. Dobbins was good, but you can do better. And J.K. Dobbins was not on the field on Sunday, which was the biggest concern of signing J.K. Dobbins in the first place. So maybe good enough is not good enough when it comes to J.K. Dobbins, is not necessarily the talent that he has. Maybe you think that J.K. Dobbins is good enough, like truly good enough, and that there's not an upgrade out there. But can you get a running back in that will give you a better chance of being available? And that's one thing that I think is going to be different, or should be different, about the Denver Broncos free agent period this year. You don't have to take on the injury risk of Tua Hufanga and Dre Greenlaw and J.K. Dobbins, or the next versions of those guys. You don't have to do that. Because the reason why those guys are on the Denver Broncos is, one, because the employer of 2 of those players is dealing with the reality of now having a very handsomely compensated quarterback, but also because they have been unavailable. right? Dobbins has had injury concerns. Dre Greenlaw and Tula Noah Hufanga have all had injury concerns. And I would say that Hufanga was the only guy that paid dividends from beginning to end this year. J.K. Dobbins paid dividends when he was healthy. And I think Dre Greenlaw was kind of a whatever. I point out the Dre Greenlaw game. I don't know that Dre Greenlaw gave you a better chance of winning this year than Justin Strnad and Alex Singleton playing together. And look, I'm not trying to play revisionist history. You absolutely do that deal to bring in Dre Greenlaw. I'm just saying it's the type of move that a team dealing with the biggest dead cap hit in the history of the NFL make and should make. You don't have to do that now. Make the medical report part of your decision making. Right? Bring in somebody at running back, at wide receiver, tight end, whatever it might be. Bring in somebody that you may have to pay a few more bucks to because they're reliably healthy. The Broncos should be willing to pay that premium and have the ability to pay that premium. But one thing I don't want the Broncos to do is lose their compass when it comes to the type of players they want to bring in. Right? Just throwing out a couple of, or one name. Somebody that reportedly the Broncos have had interest in the past. Stephon Diggs. He has been productive for the New England Patriots, but he's dealing with some off-the-field stuff. And Stephon Diggs has had a track record of wearing out his welcome. Here's a better one, because credit to Stephon Diggs, he has been a good soldier this year for New England. How about A.J. Brown? We could argue that A.J. Brown is head and shoulders above every other pass-catching player that the Denver Broncos have. Constantly, either passive-aggressively or openly bashing his quarterback is not something that a dynamic I want to bring into the room if I'm Sean Payton. So I don't know that I want A.J. Brown. I take Jalen Waddle. Seems like Jalen Waddle would be a good culture fit and would be an upgrade over everything that the Broncos have at that position. So this is what the extra money affords for the Denver Broncos. You can identify the player that you love, a player that fits your culture, a player that gives you an upgrade at a position that you're looking for an upgrade, and you can outbid people for their services. You can outbid people for the right player. That's what this affords you. This is not go out and buy 12 new players, regardless of how they fit within your scheme. You still want a measured approach. You still want to be looking for the right people. But now you have the ability to not have to go bargain hunting for guys who have missed, 2 out of the last 3 seasons. Somebody that has some medical questions about them, you can say, we want this guy and he's healthy. Whatever you're getting from Team X will outbid you. So if you marry the thought processes from George and Sean Payton, for the most part, I do think wide receiver is kind of a sticky situation because Sean Payton has a very specific view, and I don't necessarily agree with his very specific view. And I think it may cost the Broncos a chance to get an upgrade at that position, but that remains to be seen ultimately. But I do like the type of players, the culture guys. I mean, Dre Greenlaw taking away his health, seemed like a very good locker room fit. Tua Noah Hufanga was great. J.K. Dobbins, going back to him, he was a huge hit. So still be looking for those traits at the positions that you need to upgrade. But you don't have to incur the injury risk. You don't have to be sifting through the roster of a team that just paid their quarterback and looking for some cap casualties. You can go out and be a player to get the players that you want. 719-24-7-1313. Where do you start spending money if you are the Denver Broncos? What positions do they need to upgrade if they are going to be back in the AFC Championship next year? Coming up next, everyone has weighed in on Bo Nix's injury and a bit of a revelation coming from Sean Payton regarding Bo Nix's ankle. And Bo Nix, of all people, may not be super pleased that Sean Payton is sharing this stuff. That's next here on Extra Sports 1300 and 740 KVOR. An interesting revelation regarding the injury to Bo Nix not shortly after. The announcement came shortly after during the divisional round against the Buffalo Bills. Sean Payton sharing when it comes to where did I put that clip? I think it disappeared. But he said that Bo Nix was like predisposed to that particular to having an ankle injury. Here it is. Here's Sean Payton on Bo Nix breaking his ankle.
They always find a little bit more when they go in, and it wasn't a matter of if, it was a matter of when. So it wasn't because when you look at the play and you're trying to evaluate it, he said the doctor, operating surgeon, said that this was going to happen sooner than later.
And then he has also brought up how many ankle surgeries Bo Nix has had growing up. Now, to be fair to the situation, Sean Payton, George Payton, and even today, Greg Penner, the owner of the Denver Broncos, all did not show any level of concern that this was going to be a perpetual thing with him. It seems like it's just a matter of that some damage that was done based on a previous injury maybe led to this. And the fact that it was not if, but when. I mean, I know it was the worst possible timing for Bo Nix, but how different would this Broncos season have been if the when, not if, was like week 8? Right? What if it was before the Buffalo game? Everything you saw in the AFC Championship, would you be taking the Jared Stidham-led Denver Broncos against Josh Allen? So, in a way, as kind of jarring as it is to hear that Bo Nix was going to suffer this kind of an injury, the fact that it happened when it did is actually in some weird way the best case scenario. Right? I mean, there's never a good time, but if it was going to happen, I mean, Bo Nix, this happens early in the season. We're not even the Broncos. I don't know where they end up. If this happens right before the playoffs start, I don't think they get past Buffalo. Maybe I'm putting lipstick on a pig here. It's terrible what happened to Bo Nix, and watching the game on Sunday, they certainly miss him. But it just got me thinking, man, what if this was a month ago or at the beginning of the year? Or how much different would this story have been for the Denver Broncos? Now, back to Sean Payton talking about Bo Nix's injuries. We would say a few years ago remember when "that's a HIPAA violation" was in vogue? That was a phrase we used. That would be kind of a HIPAA violation if we're being honest about it. And Bo Nix apparently today, when he spoke with the media, wasn't super happy that Sean Payton was saying that. In fact, he said that Sean Payton should not have said how many surgeries he's had on his ankle, and added, quote, he doesn't really even know that, honestly. I think we're finding out in like the last 72 hours, there are indeed things that Sean Payton claims to know, but doesn't. Like what the right decision is when you're faced with a 4th and 1 on an opposing team's 14-yard line. Your ability to be able to get your backup quarterback to play at a high enough level to be able to win the AFC Championship. And now Sean Payton thinks he knows how many ankle surgeries Bo Nix has had. He doesn't. Because I'm sorry, and he said, I'm taking the side of Bo Nix. I think Bo Nix would know better than Sean Payton how many ankle surgeries he's had. But really what the important thing is moving forward, beyond the he said, and beyond the alternate reality that the Broncos live in, if this injury that was bound to happen happened at an earlier time, can the Broncos really be that confident that Bo Nix will have no issues moving forward? I don't think they can be. And they're not lying, like the surgery going great. I believe that it did. And I believe that's it. But if you are, and I think this is where Bo Nix didn't want Sean Payton talking about it, because I think there would be legitimate concern that there is an issue with Bo Nix and his ankles. And we have seen numerous athletes over the years that if they have a particular predisposition to having a part of their body injured, whether it's the knee, the back, the ankle, the whatever it might be, the shoulder, that it pops up again. And to think that this was the last one, like this fracture allowed them to go in and do a surgery that would forever prevent Bo Nix, and forget even forever, because wacky things happen in the NFL, freak injuries happen. Can they say with 100% certainty that this is not like is Bo Nix predisposed to ankle injuries? Like, can the Broncos say unequivocally that he's not? If he's had some amount of surgeries, and this injury was a matter of when, not if, I think I don't expect the Broncos to say anything other than what they have said. And I do trust doctors in the medical field in general. So I believe that Bo Nix had the best care and they fixed this fracture. I'm not saying that there even be any lingering effects from this particular injury, but if there is something about him, how long until the ankle gets injured again? And look, really what you're looking at is what's coming in a few years. Right? What's coming in a few years is the decision of the Denver Broncos to give Bo Nix all the money. And if another year or two, which he has before his rookie deal would expire, he hurts his ankle again, this is going to be a real point of contention when it comes to the Broncos' willingness to give him a long-term lucrative contract and truly make him the franchise quarterback that they believe him to be. For now, he'll recover from this one, and all signs point to him being more than ready to go for the start of next season. But it is a piece of information that you're going to file away here. And the next time that Bo Nix is listed as questionable or out because of an ankle injury, you're going to go, well, wait a minute. He hurt his ankle against Buffalo. He had multiple surgeries in the past. He was predestined or predisposed to the injury he sustained against the Buffalo Bills. Is this right now? It's not a thing when it comes to Bo Nix, the Broncos quarterback. This is just Bo Nix, the quarterback, period, dating back to college and before that. But this is just, for now, something you file away. And then if it comes up with another ankle injury, then we're going to have a conversation about the ability of Nix to stay healthy. And in fairness to him, he's been healthy. So if you're a Broncos fan, you hope that the ankle issues are behind him and they're not really issues. They're just, compounded upon one another, and maybe a surgery didn't quite fix this or that. But yeah, I don't think this is information that Sean Payton should be sharing. But the next time Sean Payton has a filter for what he says will be the first time. So why should this be any different? The personal medical history of people in his employ or whatever dynamic there is. I guess they're all Greg Penner's employees. Yeah, that's probably one of those things where you go, man, Sean, probably. And it's his quarterback. 719-247-1313. Coming up next, we'll reset with the three stories that are driving the show. That will be on 740 KVOR. Coming up next on Extra Sports 1300, it will be the Avalanche and Senators. So enjoy that. And for those of you sticking with the program, talk to you on KVOR after the top of the hour. 719-247-1313 is the number if you want to reach out. Hello there. Welcome in hour 3 on this Wednesday edition of the show, now exclusively on 740 KVOR. Avalanche hockey against the Ottawa Senators just underway with a puck drop just after 5:30 on Extra Sports 1300. Appreciate you making your way over to KVOR if you were listening on Extra Sports 1300, and if you've been on KVOR this whole time, thanks for sticking around. The number, if you would like to interact with the show, is 719-247-1313. And perhaps you have a thought or two on these, which are the 3 stories driving the show. All right, let's start with a little hoops for story number 1, shall we? Here is the Altitude Radio Network.
The inbound goes to, you got to throw it in, Payton. Murray for 3. Missed it, but got fouled. There was a whistle with 0.7 seconds to go. Oh, Detroit, what a bonehead play that is.
That sent Jamal Murray to the free throw line for the second time in just 3 seconds of clock time, not of actual linear time. It took a little bit longer than that. But Jamal Murray was fouled on a 3-point shot with 3.5 seconds to go. Unfortunately, he misses the first, makes the second 2. Nuggets down by 1. Tobias Harris gets fouled, makes 2 free throws. And then that happens. Again, Jamal Murray is fouled. A chance to redeem himself. 3 more free throws. That if he knocks down all 3, the Nuggets are taking the number 1 team in the Eastern Conference into overtime. But alas, Jamal Murray would again miss a free throw. This time it was the second free throw he took. Third one he missed intentionally. It was tipped out, and the Detroit Pistons hang on for a 109-107 victory. It was the last person that you expected to come up short for the Denver Nuggets at the end of the game. But like so many of these games the Nuggets have played without Nikola Jokic and Aaron Gordon and Christian Brown and Cam Johnson, there's a certain level of not happy to be here, but at the same time, wonderment on how they got here. That was the number 1 team in the Eastern Conference that they were playing. That team, led by an MVP candidate in Cade Cunningham, jumped out to a 13-point lead after the first quarter. In fact, they maintained a lead such as that for much of the game. And if the Nuggets would have just ended up losing by 12 or 13 points because they didn't have Nikola Jokic, Cam Johnson, et cetera, you go, oh, well. But they didn't. They got close. They had 2 chances with Jamal Murray at the free throw line to tie the game. So there is reason to be frustrated. But that has been the experience over the last 3 weeks of the Denver Nuggets. If they would just keep getting blown out, you wouldn't be bothered. You'd be able to laugh it off a little nervously because they'd be dropping down the standings, but you would say, well, they don't have Jokic. What can you expect? But this team continues to battle and continues to win games despite not having the best player in the world. So that builds up the frustration level if they have it in their power to win a game and they blow. And David Adelman said this after the game. He was clean up his potty mouth. He was peeved that they lost, but he continues to marvel at how this team just keeps plugging along. Now they're 9-6 without Nikola Jokic. They couldn't even survive 3 minutes without the guy, and they've survived 3 weeks. So as disappointing as last night was, especially the finish to that game, again, you look at the bigger picture and you say, this is a Nuggets team that has rattled off 9 wins without the best player in the world. How could they not be better off, as unfortunate of a situation as this all is? How can they not be better served when Jokic comes back for having the ability to win as many games as they have? And the confidence level of these players and the ability that they have demonstrated for David Adelman to say, even when they're fully healthy, I can go to Payton Watson and have faith in him. I could go to Tim Hardaway. I could go to Jonas Valanciunas. Not that those two were hardly the questions here, but a Jalen Pickett. I mean, Peyton Watson's the big one, but this idea that the Denver Nuggets, we knew they would be deeper. Having made the trade for Michael Porter Jr., bringing in Valanciunas with Cam Johnson, you knew they'd be a deeper team, but they might be even a deeper team than that because of the way that especially Peyton Watson has played in the absence of so many players. This has to benefit the Denver Nuggets in the long run. This has to make them an even more foe for the defending champion Thunder. And as much as I would like to see Nikola Jokic be back on the court for Sunday's primetime with the OKC Thunder, could you imagine if they don't get him back and then beat OKC? People were already leaning in the direction that the Nuggets fully healthy can beat OKC in a 7-game series. Could you imagine if they did it on Sunday without Nikola Jokic? And I do not put it out of the realm of possibility, because last night, with more than just Jokic hurt, they took the best team in the other conference to the brink. Who's to say that the Nuggets shorthanded don't beat OKC? Would I bet on it? No. Would I bet on the Denver Nuggets losing a game to the Detroit Pistons by 2? I wouldn't do that either. It's been fascinating, and if you're a Nuggets fan, you have to say, even though you want Jokic on the court, it's been a lot of fun to watch this team not just revive, but somewhat thrive without him on the floor. Let's go to story number 2.
Next year, this Denver Broncos team is going to be scary. And I think that's where you enter Von Miller. Hey, if you win a Super Bowl in 2 different eras, that'd be something crazy. I'm not throwing anybody under the bus, but that play at the end of the game where Drake May rolled out for the bootleg and got the first down, I think Von makes that play. I think, I'm not pointing fingers at nobody. I'm just saying me.
That was Von Miller on his Free Range podcast, once again openly and publicly campaigning to rejoin the Denver Broncos, something that he has made a habit of really since the moment he got traded. It's been constantly with Von Miller wanting to come back to the Denver Broncos. And that sentiment, you got to feel good if you're a Broncos fan. Like, this guy loves the city, the organization, and you, the fans, enough that from the minute he walked out the door when he got traded to the Rams, he has been wanting to come back. And that's great. But there is another step here, which is actually making it and it being in the Broncos' best interest to make this reunion happen. Von Miller is pointing the finger at somebody. There was a player that was in the vicinity of Drake May and could not knock him out of bounds or tackle him before he got the first down, and that was Jonah Ellis. Coincidentally, the very player most negatively impacted by the arrival of Von Miller. I wouldn't like that a guy who's trying to make his way onto the Denver Broncos is pointing a finger at one of their current players and saying that play that he didn't make, I would make it. I don't like that. But I just think that the Denver Broncos have so many more priorities, so many higher priorities. And there's something about going back into the past when your present is better. Like, I know you won Super Bowl 50 because of Von Miller, but then there were a lot of lean years after that. And you've been able to build yourselves back up. Just the optics of we're doing this, it feels a little beneath the Denver Broncos. So if they can determine that the reasonable developmental arc of Jonah Ellis would not give them a better player than an aging Von Miller, then I would like to hear that in the press conference announcing the free agent signing of Von Miller. Because I have a difficult time believing that. And Jonah Ellis is one of the young players on this Denver Broncos team that I actually think quite highly of and think has a real chance to be an even greater impact player next year and going forward. I don't think you want to give up on that for some nice, story in July. But I also certainly don't think that Von Miller should be anywhere near the top of the list of offseason moves for the Denver Broncos. There's a lot of things that have to happen. And then if there's money left over, if you can make the football case that Von Miller in that role would be better than Jonah Ellis, then we can talk. But it just, I know nostalgia sentiment, it's a powerful thing. I just think that the Broncos need to be a little bit more focused on truly upgrading their roster. But that's our question of the day. Do you want Von Miller back on the Denver Broncos? 719-247-1313, or you could comment on the Extra Sports 1300 Facebook page. We'll stick with the NFL and go to the third story, which is more national, but I'll make it local. Bill Belichick not getting the necessary votes to be inducted into Canton, reportedly, because they're not going to announce this for a few more weeks. But that's the report, and it shocked the NFL world. And I think that it is the only ego that needs checked more than Bill Belichick's is Hall of Fame voters across every sport who feel like they can withhold the greatest honor of an individual's professional life because they want to get revenge. They want to put Bill Belichick in his place because he mumbled his answers and belittled them at the podium. And I'm not justifying that kind of stuff. You have a microphone, you have a pen, destroy him in that way. But when it comes time for him to go into the Hall of Fame, and an easier coach to put in the Hall of Fame I cannot think of, that's when you choose to exact your revenge. That is really petty. And the fact that nobody is coming forward to say they voted him in and they're, we're not supposed to. Will they take away your vote if you do? No? Okay, then fess up. Because if this is about the way that Bill Belichick treated media members, it is pathetic to take this out on him at this. All the years you had to write columns and do radio shows and you have social media to destroy this guy. Even when you cast your vote, you could send out a tweet immediately that said I hated this vote more than any other because Bill Belichick is a jerk and good things should not happen to him. But I take my voting very seriously, and the football reasons to keep him out just do not exist. Like, you have that ability. You can say you feel icky. You could do whatever you want. But to keep the man out, to send some kind of a message, knowing full well, too, that he's going to get in. This isn't Barry Bonds. You're not going to hold firm for the next decade or so, which makes it an even worse thing because what are you really affecting? So it's quite pathetic, honestly. But I'll tell you, I'll localize this. If you don't want to shed a tear for Bill Belichick, I don't blame you. Bill Belichick is going to get in before Mike Shanahan. So the longer they mess around with Bill Belichick and exact their measure of revenge and be petty and carry out this stupid vendetta they have, is going to keep Mike Shanahan out of the Hall of Fame because they're not putting in Shanahan before Belichick. So if you're a Broncos fan, I don't expect you to feel too bad for Bill Belichick. But the ripple effect, the domino effect of it to keep Mike Shanahan out another year, it's another year he has to wait. That should upset you. That Mike Shanahan has to wait another year because of a petty vendetta, because of a bunch of people who are hiding behind the suggestion by the Pro Football Hall of Fame not to make public their vote. But they have done something. These 11 committee members have done something that I didn't think was possible. And that's turned Bill Belichick into a sympathetic figure. And that's exactly what they did, because the only ego that is clearly more outsized than Bill Belichick is theirs. 719-247-1313. Take your thoughts on the three stories that are driving the show. More Drive Time Sports coming up next here on 740 KVOR. Still getting used to the whole when we break away on one station to go to the other. Apologize for that. Drive Time Sports here on 740 KVOR. Avalanche Hockey on Extra Sports 1300. They're taking on the Ottawa Senators. Your thoughts at 719-24-7, 1313. A couple of texts here. This from the 719 regarding, I believe, Von Miller. Reminds me of Peyton Manning's neck issue coming to Denver, and we know how that worked out. If this is about Von Miller, it's a very different situation. The Denver Broncos are not as desperate for a pass rusher as they were for a quarterback. Peyton Manning was brought in to be the starter. Von Miller would be brought in to be, at best, the third man in the rotation. So, again, if you just would like to see it happen, even you got to say, okay, if this is going to happen, about 8 other things need to happen first. Can we at least agree on that? Maybe you don't agree with I think it's moving backwards to dip back into your history when you're in such a better place. But can we at least agree that this should not be anywhere close to the top of George Payton's to-do list? And it's not going to be, by the way. The two guys that have the least sentiment towards Von Miller are George Payton and Sean Payton, especially Sean. The only way Von Miller is going to end up a Denver Bronco is if Sean Payton believes that adding Von Miller will make his team that much better and get them back to the AFC Championship with a better result. And I just don't see how Von Miller does at this age and at the role he would be being brought in to occupy. I don't see it. This coming in on the Belichick snub, temporary snub. Donnie says, I have heard all day that Bill Polian might have influenced the MVP voters. Do you think there is any truth to that? Well, I think there is, because Bill Polian, it was reported that he was the one that convinced them, other people, not to vote. Now, his reason, to be fair, is because of Spygate. So that was reportedly Bill Polian's reason. Bill Polian came out and told Sports Illustrated, I voted for Bill Belichick. And then later, he came back and said, actually, I don't remember. Can you, take that for just a second? You can't remember who you voted for the highest honor bestowed upon anyone to have ever been in the NFL. Let me ask you this, Bill Polian. How would that make you feel if one of the voters that's responsible for putting you in can't quite remember if they voted for you? Who'd you vote for in the presidential election? I don't know. I punched a hole in my ballot. I'm not sure. It could have been Donald Trump. It might have been Kamala Harris. I could have voted for Ralph Nader. I really don't remember. I just kind of went in there and just punched it and got out of there. Or filled in the dot. I mean, can you imagine? So that flip-flopping from Bill Polian tells me that there could be a lot of truth to Bill Polian influencing others. But let me ask a question on top of that. I think it is a wise voter, and I'll equate this to voting for in elections. Okay. I think it is a good voter who takes in arguments from both sides, but ultimately makes the decision for themselves. So the idea that Bill Polian could influence I feel like says something not great about those who were influenced by him. And what could he have possibly said? Like, we all know what happened with Spygate. Like, the story of Bill Belichick is not an untold one. So what could Bill Polian have possibly done to influence people? Is Spygate a more legitimate reason to not vote for Bill Belichick? Yes. But is it enough to not vote for him? No, I don't think it is. So maybe I certainly think that it's possible Bill Polian, who, by the way, and you'll appreciate this, Donnie, me bringing up the fact once again that Bill Polian thought Lamar Jackson should play wide receiver. I certainly think he could have went on a crusade against Bill Belichick, given the histories between the Indianapolis Colts and the New England Patriots. However, like if somebody comes to you and says you should vote for candidate X because, or you shouldn't vote for candidate X because I hate them, even though you believe that that is the most deserving candidate, what does it say about you as a voter that you're willing to be like, you know what, you're right, because you don't like the guy, because you have a vendetta against him, I'm going to help you carry out that vendetta. So I could see Bill Polian going on a crusade against Bill Belichick. I absolutely can believe that Bill Polian didn't vote for Bill Belichick, was one of those 11. But I also think that there are 10 other voters who didn't vote for him. Were they influenced by Bill Polian? Because I feel like that doesn't speak well of them as voters. Or was it about Bill Belichick was mean to me, and I'm going to keep him out for a year just to stick it to him. This coming in from Donnie. After today, he probably doesn't even know who Lamar Jackson is. No. Yeah, how do you, I mean, I didn't want to go there, and I don't know if that's where you're going, but you can't, again, you can't remember whether you voted for Bill Belichick, arguably the greatest coach in the history of football. You can't remember if you filled in that circle. I could see, like, I don't remember if I voted for Kenny Anderson, with all due respect. I would remember if I vote for Bill Belichick. So his whole flip-floppy thing stinks. By the way, on this topic, Adam Schefter just tweeted out a letter or a statement, whatever you want to call it, from the Pro Football Hall of Fame. I will just read for you. No, I don't want to tweet at Adam Schefter. Thank you, X. The Pro Football Hall of Fame understands and respects the passionate reaction of many fans, media members, and enshrinees of the hall itself in light of published reports regarding the voting results of the class of 2026. It's that very passion that propels the game. Don't suck up to us. Get to the point. The hall also respects the members of the selection committee when they follow the selection process bylaws. It is an honor to serve as a selector. More self-serving nonsense. Each year, the hall reviews the selection process and the composition of the 50-person selection committee. If it is determined that any member or members violated the selection process bylaws, they understand action will be taken. That could include the possibility of such selectors would not remain a member of the committee moving forward. What integrity of the process? What it mean? Wait a minute. Is this statement just about people sharing their vote? We're all talking about the fact that 11 people, supposed ball knowers, are keeping Bill Belichick out of the Hall of Fame. And they're talking about their bylaws? Like, am I understand? Like, let me know. Am I reading this right? Is this not about, are the bylaws what led to Bill Belichick not receiving the minimum 40 votes? Or are they talking about the people who have come forward and raised their hand and said, hey, don't be mad at me? Oh my God, you want to talk about tone deaf. If they're hunting Mike Sando and some of the and Bill Polian because he can't remember if he voted, but he said that he did and he did not multiple times. Are they going to go after those people? Or is there some kind of bylaw that keeping Bill Belichick out of the Hall of Fame violated? I don't think there's any bylaw that was violated when it comes to Bill Belichick. Or is there a rule? This sounds to me like they are upset at the people who have come forward and been critical about the people that won't come forward and have shared their vote when the Hall of Fame urges you not to. That sounds like a bylaw that is violated. Maybe there is a bylaw about, carrying out a petty vendetta. I'm looking at the replies. People asking Grok or Grok, whatever it's called, the AI on X, like, what does this mean? Does Grok ever answer anything? Oh, here's the reaction from AI, your latest example of why the robots will not be taking over anytime soon. This is a statement from the Pro Football Hall of Fame addressing media reports of the 2026 class selection. It notes passionate fan reactions and okay. Thanks for nothing, AI. Now, some people in the replies are saying that it means that if you're using your voting power to carry out a vendetta, we're going to find you and kick you out. If that's what it is, then good. But they don't. Like, you just wish that once they would say exactly what it is. We hear the uproar about Bill Belichick, and we are looking into whether the reasons for keeping Bill Belichick out are legitimate ones and ones that they are supposed to consider. Now that I'm saying it, that's probably what the statement means. But again, kind of the whole point of this conversation is that Hall of Fame voters across every sport are a little self-important, a little highfalutin. They believe they are the almighty when it comes to ruling on these type of things. So I could see where the Hall of Fame is like, you're upset that people kept Bill Belichick out. We're upset at the people who came out and said they voted for Belichick. That goes against a very, very secret ceremony that nobody should be allowed to see. And I don't even want people's voting pool. I just want them to have to come out and say to the public that they voted against Bill Belichick and make your case. I just want transparency. I don't need to take it another step. I just want the transparency. What the kids say, stand on business. Like that's what I want. I want you to stand on business. You didn't vote for Bill Belichick. Say you didn't, and say why you didn't. Because the fact that you're not, when so many other people are perfectly willing to come out and say why they voted for him, tells me that your reasons for keeping him out were not legitimate ones. And you know it, and that's why you won't come forward. Sunlight being the best disinfectant and all that. 719-24-7, 1313. Avs and Senators underway on Extra Sports 1300. I'll keep you in the loop on that. Take any remaining thoughts you may have and see if I missed anything on this Wednesday here on 740 KVOR. We found one. Well, one came forward. We have a dissenting opinion on Bill Belichick making the Pro Football Hall of Fame. This coming from Vahe, Vahe Gregorian, who is a writer for the Kansas City Star. So basically, I won't bore you with the setup and trying to get the clicks and the scrolls and all that kind of stuff, which is clearly what he's trying to do. I'll save you the long preamble. Essentially, he voted for 3 other people because they had been waiting longer. It was their turn, not Belichick. I don't know that what I will say is, okay, this is what I asked for. Somebody came out, raised their hand, and said, I didn't vote for Bill Belichick. And said, here's why. And it's not because I don't like Bill Belichick. Fair enough. Here's where we have a normal sports debate. I don't like it's their turn. The NFL a few years ago put into place an apparatus to be able to catch some of these players who are and coaches and everything like that have fallen through the cracks. If what I think you should do as a voter, have all the candidates in front of you and vote for the most deserving. I feel like that's the way that you get to the right answer and avoid some of these issues better than, well, we got to put this guy in. Oh, no, we got to go here. No, we got to go here, because you know what that kind of thinking has done? It's kept Mike Shanahan out of the Hall of Fame all this time. Right? Oh, we got to go this guy. No, not whose turn it is. Look at them and say who's the most deserving. And if somebody were to fall through the cracks, then my goodness, like, how many people did you vote in above this person? Maybe you need to rethink whether they are truly a Hall of Famer. If they can't be one of the 3 best, which, by the way, does expose one of the flaws in all of this, which is the fact that you can only vote for 3, and you somehow have to compare Bill Belichick to Roger Craig. Like, that's a legitimate problem that comes up every year. The idea that you have to decide between a player, a coach, a contributor, all that kind of stuff, that makes no sense. Bill Belichick should not be kept out because Roger Craig is a player, or what, you know what I mean? So I think but that's legitimate. Like, in some ways, it's an okay problem to have. It's a little bit of flaw in the system. Good that somebody's bringing it to light. Let's try to fix that. This is not petty vendettas and all this other garbage, politics and all that. But I don't like that justification either. Now, once in a while, it does get some people in who may have legitimately been overlooked. But what it does is it kicks the can down the road, and then you look back and you go, oh, you're constantly playing catch up. Well, this guy was deserving that year, but it was this guy's turn. So now I'm going to push this guy back. Oh, the candidates are even better. I'm going to push this guy. And you're just continue to create the problem over and over and over again. I think as a voter, the best way to go about it is to just say, if you want to point out the fact that it's voting for 3 and you have to decide between broadcasters, owners, coaches, players, and that's a little bit difficult to do, then speak up. But under the current rules, you should just pick one of the three, or you should just pick the three. And as difficult as I acknowledge that it might be to weigh a coach versus a player and so on, I would tell you that any player, any broadcaster, any owner, that is Hall of Fame worthy is not as Hall of Fame worthy as Bill Belichick is a Hall of Fame worthy coach in this go round. Other years, maybe. But like Bill Belichick is, if you try to make that comparison, he is the guy is the best coach in the history of the National Football League. And if you say, well, Robert Kraft hired him and blah, 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 owners are not as important as coaches and players. Okay, so I vote Belichick in over Robert Kraft. So I appreciate this writer for the Kansas City Star for saying this is why, and I respectfully disagree. I think that you vote for the most deserving candidates that are right there in front of you. And the top of that list. Now, the other question that it begs is whether is he, because he's coming forward with a little bit better reason than I don't like Bill Belichick, right? So given what I just said and what his reasoning is, how many more of the 10 remaining that voted against him do you believe the 3 they voted for, it was their time, and Bill Belichick just has to wait his turn in line? Because I actually don't believe that many more than just a couple of other voters felt the same way as this writer for the Kansas City Star. I would imagine that the prevailing reason, the reason that most of the voters had, was based on Spygate or based on a personal vendetta because Bill Belichick's a jerk. I that's what I would think. But good on this writer coming out. I don't think he's voting the right way. But it's certainly a more defensible position to say, hey, I got to try to get these people in, then I'm not going to put in Bill Belichick because I want to send him a message. All right. So what else? What else? I think that's about it for the day. Appreciate your patronage. Appreciate you hanging on 740 KVOR or moving from Extra Sports 1300. Avs just got underway. I tuned in over to Extra Sports 1300, and they're doing some on ice thing. The NHL is getting as bad as the NBA and not starting nearly on time. But Avs and Senators are underway. We'll talk about that game. More on the Broncos and anything else that may come about over the evening time. Appreciate your patronage. And again, be back with you tomorrow at 3 on 740 KVOR, but also back on Extra Sports 1300 as well.